Assalamu alaikum students, welcome to another important lecture. And this is second lecture of the series that we started in our last lecture. And in the last lecture we started talking of supporting processes, that how we can support learning processes, and particularly how we can support language teaching process. So this was in fact the project that we started in the last lecture, and today we will continue that and we'll talk about a second component of that the project that we started off, right? If you remember, the last week we talked about CBI, content based instruction. And today, this lecture, that is lecture number 27, and now we are near, of course, the completion of the course. You know that we will have 32 lectures, and today we are here for lecture number 27, right? And this lecture is on an important area. You're all familiar with that. If you see on your screen, coursebook, right? That how to use coursebooks for language teaching. This topic we will discuss in this lecture. Before that, as usual, what do? Yes, we review the previous lecture, and today we will review our last lecture that was on CBI, content based instruction. So what did we discuss in that lecture? We had a discussion that what does CBI refer to, and we saw that CBI refers to instructions which are based on content, right? And then we also saw that you see the content should be relevant, right? And again we saw that this content should be as per the expectations, as per the demands of the learners, right? And we also saw in the last lecture that relevance of content is important, and the content should be interesting for the learners, right? So relevance, right, and interest of the audience, and then of course the content is an important part of that the theory we talked about, CBI, right? And then we saw some of the commonly used the practiced models. One was theme-based, right? Theme-based instruction, right? And we move from one theme to another. And then we talked about what? Sheltered, right? Instructions, adjunct, and SCLT. These were the models. We had a discussion on it, and I also directed you to read more about these models, browse these models, use internet, right, and see what else you could explore and prepare yourself accordingly. Then we saw that, of course, what is the position of CBI, right? And we discussed that it is situated within the broader paradigm of CLT, right? I'm sure you all know what does CLT stand for. That is communicative language teaching. So that is articulated the underlying principles of CBI and shown how these principles mesh with those of the communicatively oriented classroom. So this is very important the aspect that we saw. Then we also saw that the classroom extract illustrates the underlying principles in action, right? So I mean the classroom activities are important, right? And when you are following the CBI, when you are focusing on content based instruction, means when you give the instruction and you focus on the content. However, if you are having adjunct model, where we saw that a psychology the teacher works with an ESL the teacher. These both instructors, they in fact coordinate with one another to in fact achieve their goals. The psychology teacher in fact intends to talks about different theories of psychology, and therefore instructions are in, English, of course, other than the first language. Then we saw that they provide what? A clear picture of how content and language provide complementary aspects of the curriculum, and how the input, and we call it rich environment of all CBI classrooms, can be led to a successful language acquisition. So this is a very important point that we talked in the last lecture, that what happens in this case, that how content and language, right, they provide complementary aspects of the curriculum, and how the input, right, that is rich environment of the CBI classroom, can lead to successful language acquisition. So this is all we talked about in the last lecture, that you see we focus on the content. This is important, and instruction you give, of course, they are based on the content, and we in fact highlighted many examples, right? When you teach English to the business students, or you do teach English to IT, to engineering students, so over there, yes, you teach language, right? You teach English language, but at the same time, you do not ignore the content, of course, you do not ignore the discipline of the learners, that they are pursuing an engineering degree, they are pursuing a degree in computer sciences. So that's why CBI the theory works well for such programs, or for such the courses where English is taught as a sport course, right? So examples you quote from the business world, example you quote from the economics, examples you quote from the discipline that the learners are pursuing, particularly if you are in fact teaching it as a sport course. So for this, we saw that this CBI helps you a lot, right? Why? Because CBI talks about content-based instruction. CBI refers to relevance, right, of course the relevance of that content to the learners, and also CBI in fact incorporates what the interest of the audience. So if the audience are interested in this course, audience are interested in the content that you are teaching, and of course the instructions are based on the content, and then this would make a beautiful combination, of course, of language teaching plus the content, of course, of that language. And then you see, we saw that the content and language, they provide a complementary aspects of the curriculum. This is what we talked in the last lecture. I want you to review that lecture again, and I want you to explore more about CBI, because in short lecture we in fact are unable to go in details, right? So I expect from you people that now you are mature students, now you are in the 4th semester of this course, you are about to plunge into the job market. So for this particular aspect, my dear students, you have to be self-sufficient, you have to rely on yourself, and you have to explore things accordingly. That's what we talked about in last lecture. Let's move on to today's lecture, that is what is a course book, right? This is how a course book can support language learning process, right? And you know that course books are very important, right? In every language program, wherever you see, there are course books, of course, and the teachers use them, right? But you see, we will talk about that how we can use those course books successfully, right? So the efficient and effective use of course book for language teaching, the purpose, right? And this lecture, today's lecture, in fact, will talk about the right use of the course books for language teaching process. So what is a course book? Course books are pre-packaged, right? Of course, you get something which is pre-packaged, which is pre-done, right? So it is some, like best examples are BBC Stage 1, BBC Beginners Stage 1, BBC Stage 2, in fact, right? Practice in the progress, going to work in English, right? So getting on in English. These are some of the books which are used in language teaching, right? If you you might have attended any language course, you might have done any language program. So over there, right, a language program which has been established, so the teachers in fact rely on these books, and follow me series. It's also important. There are so many books, of course, being used for language teaching purpose, and the good teachers, they keep on, of course, updating their course books, and if they feel that some books are outdated, so they remove them from the curriculum and they bring good books, in fact. And definitely we cannot ignore the importance of books for language teaching. So it is what? A pre-packaged and published book used by the students and teacher as the primary basis of a language course. So this is important, right? Why? Because you get something which is there, right? And now you have to use. Again, here I would say that being a good student of language of TEFL, you should be able to use the book in the best possible way. Again, it is a skill, right, to use the book. There are so many books are there, but the point is that if the teacher is able to exploit that book in the class, and of course he develops interest of the students in that book, so you will see that things would be easy for you, right? And the class would move forward, and of course they would in fact definitely improve the language. So course books range from those that are broadly focused on developing all language skills to those that focus on a specific skill such as writing, or specific area such as hotel management, right? So here the ESP part is there, of course, for a specific purpose, mean hotel management. So some books are there which in fact integrate all the 4 skills, right? BBC, again I would say stage 1 is a book that integrates all the 4 skills, right? Practice and progress in fact focuses more on writing skills. So I mean, you could say that sometimes a book is there and you can use it in different way, and skills can be integrated. Fine, agreed. But you see, mostly if you see books that is used in language teaching, so over there in fact the book compiler in fact wants students to in fact integrate skills. This is important point that you have to keep in mind. But some books are there which are specific to one skill, and there are most of the books which in fact incorporate all the 4 skills. In addition to this course book, in fact, fine, student book, course books packages may include audio cassettes or CDs, video, workbooks, CD-ROMs, test packages, and internet material. Yes, of course, nowadays we live in the age of technology, so we get CDs, we get DVDs, we get audio, the cassettes. There used to be time that, well, we used to rely on audio cassettes, and now they have been replaced with CDs, and now even DVDs. Right? So of course now you live in the age of technology, you have internet, you have laptop with you, you have computers with you. So instead of using those old the cassettes, now we have started using CDs or DVDs, which are easy to carry, fine, and of course they are cheap as well, fine. So now we are using this one, and these things come right with books, and now you buy good books and you will get a CD as well. So a course book is a learning tool shared by teachers and learners that can be used in systematic and flexible way. This is very important, that of course once you see a book, once you use a book in a language course, first select a book, that which book would be best for your learners. And again, you need to know, need analysis of the learner. For example, you have to teach students of hotel management, and then you have to find out, first of all, do research and find out in fact the best book that could be used to teach language to the students of hotel management, or you have to teach in fact language to the drivers, for example. So again, you have to pick a book that could use in the class, and that could be in fact incorporated to teach language to the drivers. So that's why the selection of book again is important, and you need to know your readers, you need to know your learners, fine, so that you could select a best book, and of course you can recommend that book to your learners. It is important to use it well. It is important to understand how it is put together and how it can be adapted to meet the needs of your particular learners. This is important, right? Again, it's your experience, it's your skill that tells you how to use a book, right? At time you must have seen that some passages the teachers they ignore that, in fact. So before you start using a book, being a student of this course, being a student of the TEFL, you need to know that what are the contents of the book, how that book has been arranged, right? And you can of course follow it accordingly. You can adapt your book as per the needs of your learners, as per in fact as per the resources available. So this is important, my dear students, when you talk about the course book. So in simple, course book is a pre-packaged published books. They are of course the best, they can be the best sources for language teaching if you learn how to use them, right? And if you understand your learners' needs, right? And if you make your learners to have a book with them, and in this way it is a systematic way, right? You move in a systematic way, and that way, my dear students, really of course helps you being teacher, and of course it helps them. It helps your learners as well. And in fact, with the language courses particularly, I mean, some people, they may object to this the course book. They say, well, we should teach language through authentic material that has not been used for language teaching. We should bring material from different sources. Fine, agreed. But the point is that of course, even if you have a book, if you are able to, if you have selected a book, right, and you can use it well, right, in the class, and if you are prepared to use it, so I tell you that book can be a good source. That book would definitely help you. So in this way, my dear students, you can of course move forward. You can in fact think positively to use a book, in fact, and for this purpose you can visit around. You can see different institutions where books are taught. You can go to good universities, right? And for language teaching, you can visit language university, and of course you can come to National University of Modern Languages. You can visit National University of Modern Languages. Over there you can see that which books are being taught, right? You can have a meeting with the teachers there, right? They would guide you, in fact, and you can, with the permission, you can in fact visit different classes where different skills are taught, or where the teacher is integrating the skills. So in this way you will come to know a lot about language teaching, that how language can be taught and which books can be used, particularly which course books are there. So let's come to the background, to the design and the use of course books. It's very important. So let's come to the background, to the design and use of the course books. So if you see, let's go back to see that of course how this the textbook, of course, the use of the course book has come into being. So up until the mid-20th century, the language books were mainly used in academic setting to understand the written text of the target language. So if you go back to mid-20th century, you will come to know that of course these tests, of course, language books, particularly the course books, of course, were mainly used in academic setting to understand the written text. And you must have seen that there are some books available, of course, where they call it spoken English, and there are some dialogues both in Urdu and English. If you go back to 1970s, right, and late 80s as well, you will see some books in fact easily available, and those books in fact had some dialogues written by somebody. And of course people, in fact, there were no language centers to teach language then, and you see people were not aware. So that was the way the people used to buy that books, and they used to cram those dialogues, right? So this approach is called what as grammar translation method. If I go back to GTM, where what, of course, the focus was on that the reading, in fact, the text available, of course. We saw it in a grammar translation method, the use of course books for reading passages. You see, and I'm sure you remember that over there, what teacher does, that he makes students reads, right? And people read, of course, and of course there was the passage, right? And student read that passage, of course, and they come to know about the culture of that writer, right? And then they also, I mean, learn by reading, in fact. So that's what you see. If you see in retrospect, you will find that, I mean, the use of the course book is not new. It is from the mid 20th century. In 1960 and 70s, the focus shifted from GTM to audiolingual method and grammar. In fact, now there was a shift, right? From mid 20th century, okay, that was the practice. The practice was that read to learn a language, right? And we saw in GTM. Now, if you move on from 1960s to 70s, so there was a shift. You remember we had a detailed discussion and we discussed that many a times in last lecture, in the last semester as well, that there was a shift from what this GTM to grammar translation method to audiolingual method. That audio, you listen, in fact, and then lingual method, right? The ALM was the outgrowth of behaviorist theories, right? That you see, learning as habit formation. In audiolingual method, of course, there were lots of drills, right? And we learned in that method that, of course, the more the drills you do, the more you learn, right? So that's why, I mean, it refers to behaviorist theory, that language learning is what a drill-based activity. The more drills you do, the more you learn. The result of response to stimuli as well. Language course books use dialogues, pattern practice, and substitution drills in which the teacher provided a stimulus, such as a sentence beginning, with which they what happens with they and cue, she, in fact, right? Teachers used to give them cue, that Ali works and the cue he works, in fact. Boys work and the cue they work. So there were cues were given, and learner provided a response, sentences changing the subject from they to she. So in this way, there were drills, right? In ALM, we saw that, of course, lots of drills were there, right? And you see, lots of oral rehearsals were there, right? Students, you used to respond in chorus, right? And there were sentence transformations as well, right? But the language teaching was based on drills, and I'm keeping in mind the behaviorist theory, in fact. So this is what we have seen, in fact. Now, again, if you move on, that what structural linguistics, right? See, because now if you move on, then the focus was on structure of language, right? That structure is important, right? Which views language as a system. That language is, of course, if you remember, we talked that, of course, there are different systems of the language. Pragmatics is there, syntax is there, semantics is there, pragmatics is there, phonetics is there, right? And then, of course, syntax, I mean structural linguistics, that language, of course, I mean language is what, that there are some patterns, right? And you have to learn the patterns to use that language. Then in 1970s and 80s, what happened? There was a shift towards notional functional approach, right? From the word notion. According to this approach, what happened? Language was understood to be used for purpose of functions, right? Expression. I mean, this was, of course, that language was used to express something. Now, what to express? Express opinions, and to talk and write about both what abstract and concrete topics or notions such as the time and weather. Communication took precedence over grammar. This was what? A shift, right? From what? 1970s and 80s, and there was a shift towards notional functional approach, right? And according to this approach, language was understood to be used for purposes of function, such as expressing opinions, and to talk or write about both abstract and concrete topics, right? And here, for the first time, we saw that language is for communication, and communication took precedence over the grammar. This was in fact a shift in paradigm from 1970s and 80s. We saw that we learn language to communicate, right? So, and if we fail to communicate, it means that, of course, if we are unable to communicate in that language, so what is the point in knowing the syntax and grammar and all that, and if the speaker cannot communicate? So the purpose of language was communication, and this was the shift, this was a change, and it was really, I mean, you could say it was a right move. That, you see, if you are able to communicate the message, if you are able to express your sadness, your happiness, fine. So it means you are a successful person. If you do it, you are successful. If you can't, you may not be successful. So that was a shift. Then course books began to emphasize functional language as well as pair work and group work activities in which learners use the language to communicate with each other. So in this way we saw that, right? That course books, of course, we started that word to emphasize on functional language as well as pair work and group work activities in which learners use the language to communicate with each other. So again, this was that I mean, for the first time, of course, the books were used, right, for functional language, right, for the pair works, because lots of activities were there in the books. Still, if you see some books, in fact, that are used in language teaching, these books are full of activities, and of course the teacher has to exploit those activities in the class. And generally, of course, it is believed that, you see, if you have a book in front of you and the learners, in fact, take interest that book, and the learners of the language, they know how the book has been organized, and they know the importance of that book, and the teacher tries his level best to use that book in the class, and of course he tries to integrate the skills, and he tries to, of course, make the most of it. He tries to use every picture in that book, and he goes with every exercise that is given, and he makes the approach communicative, so it can be a successful move, right? Because the book can be, of course, a very good source for language teaching. And why books are, of course, important, why course books are recommended, because they in fact these books, and the learners remain focused, right? And learners, in fact, once they develop interest, they move on, right? They move on. And because if there is no, a book, for example, there's no course book, and if the teachers rely on authentic material, then every day students have to wait that which handout that they will use in the class. However, if they have a book with them, so they can foresee that tomorrow you will be talking about this unit, and they would prepare themselves in advance. And that, advanced preparation, my dear students, of course, again improves thinking skills of the students, and once they come in the class, they ask questions, right? So in this way, dear students, learning process can be enhanced, right? So the developmental of then EAP, academic, right, of course, English for academic purpose and English for specific purpose also influenced the kinds of material that were published, right? So in this way, you see that you could see, once you move on, then we saw that we need English for academic purpose and we need English for specific purpose. And then, of course, now you have, right, that like you have IELTS academic, we talk about IELTS last lecture, and of course IELTS journal, right? And then you have the course academic writing, fine, research writing, and then of course you have a course, writing, a general writing, of course, lay person's writing, and then of course specific purpose means the business writing, engineering writing, in fact, economics writing, so of course for a specific purpose. Other approaches to language teaching have also questioned the effectiveness of course books. The intro of a task-based language teaching in 1980s. Yes, there are objections to the use of books. The objections can be that books, in fact, they in fact make the learners passive, right? Because learner in fact cannot think, cannot come out of the book, right? And the learner in fact comes I mean to communicate that the language, but when he sees that book, and again he starts thinking that, well, it was the activity that they used to do in other courses in their I mean this is a traditional way of teaching. However, when they come for the language learning, so they expect from the teachers that, of course, once they would complete the course, right, once they finish that course, they would be able to communicate in that language, right? To some extent, of course, we cannot expect that the learner should be speaking word perfect language, but at least he should have confidence that once he leaves that course, when he completes that course, he would develop his interest so that he could polish his skills, right, by his own efforts, right? So this is what the people had reservations. They had the problems with this, and I mean feeling that handbook is an old way, and the course book does not have any creativity. Yes, I mean this can be possible if the teacher in fact is not innovative, if the teacher is unable to use that book in different ways. So again, the teacher adds value to that book, and it is the job of the teacher to use that book, in fact, to exploit that book in such a way that learner would not feel that it is the old way. They find some change in this book as well. Now, this was a short background to our the course books. Now let's move on to what that is the next point, that is principles for using course book. Very important point, right? What are the principles, right? You being the TEFL instructors, you will be teaching English as a foreign language, so which principles you can keep in mind? And again, these are not the hard and fast principles. You can think of more principles, in fact, because you are language teachers, of course, and you will be language teachers. So once you start teaching language, you would realize that how successfully books can be used, and then you can incorporate that the principle. Fine. So here, once we understand how the course book is organized, this is very important point, right? When you get a book and see it, right, how many sections are there, how many chapters are there, right, and how book has been organized, and see the preface of the book, read about the book, right? This is very important. The more you read about the book, the better it would be. Sometimes it happens that the teacher gets a book and starts using the book, and once he reaches the mid of the book, he realizes that of course it was not a good way, because he has left some important points, right? So once you see a book, once you get a book, in fact somebody recommends you a book, so understand how the book has been organized. If it is a one book for all 4 skills, maybe the section would be for speaking skills, maybe last section would be writing skills, or mid would be reading for listening. So organization of a book is important. You need to know how book has been organized, and then start thinking that how the compiler, how the writer has published, of course the publisher has published this book, how writer has, why and how writer has used this order. A course book provides visible outline for what is to be learned in the classroom. This is important. If you have the model in front of you, right, and then you can easily move on. Course books are described metaphorically as maps, right? The course books are road maps, in fact. If the road map is clear in your mind, you can easily reach your destination, right? So take books as road maps. Metaphorically, they are road maps, and provided you know. And of course, my dear students, for language teaching, you are being teachers, you will get a separate book. Of course, you call it teacher's book. And then, of course, students have their own book. A student book is different from the teacher's book. The teacher book have, of course, some helping material. The keys are also available with the teacher's book. However, students may not have that facility, right? So you know how the book is organized, right? And then, of course, that what is the road map, right? So road maps you need to know, because you have to reach a destination, you have to reach your goal, you have to achieve your goals. For that, you need to know, you need to follow, you need to know and follow the road map. Most course books are organized around key features of language. Yes, again important. A book on phonetics, book on phonology, book on listening skills, focus will be on listening skills, book on reading skills, right, or book on writing skills. So again, definitely when you see a book on writing skills, so different features of that book would be there, right, and you will be able to use them. Course books also emphasize 2 or more of 4 skills of speaking, listening, reading, and writing. This is important, right? So when you have a course book, so they also emphasize 2 or more of the 4 skills of speaking, listening, and reading. I told you earlier that there are some books which integrate all the 4 skills, but there are some specific skill books which refer to only speaking, listening, all that. So this was the first point, that understand how the course book is organized. Another important point, my dear student, is adapt the material. So what does it mean, adapt the material? Once you have a book with you, so how would you adapt the material? So course books are not written for a specific group of people. Mind you, it's very important, right? Once you see a book, and don't think that this is written only for adults, it is only for the beginners, it is only for the bankers, it is only for the children. So you see the target audience could be, of course, any, of course, right? You never know who are your target audience for that book. What you have to do is you have to adapt the material, right? So they are not written for a specific group of people. They are written for a generalized target group. Example, for children or adults, for use in for use in English-speaking countries or in other countries, for beginners, intermediate, or advanced levels, and so on. So that's why, of course, now it is the job of a teacher to adapt the material, in fact, right? And you know, because of course book is for the bank managers, operation managers. You have to adapt it for your class, right? That's why adaptation of a book for your needs is a must. No book can meet all the needs and interests of each group of learners that uses it. For this reason, a course book must be adapted to your particular group of learners. This is important. We try to adapt our book to specific group of learners, which is important. Who are, yes, there are a group of people, in fact, and it is your responsibility that how you do it, right? For example, when you teach business students, of course, and you have a case study with you, you tell your students, imagine yourself at that pace, in fact. So this is what is expected, you see. And then, of course, in Clam 19, there is research also that page 12 suggests that following acronyms for adapting a course book, right? There is SARS, SARS. Now, what is SARS, by the way? Can you think of what is SARS? SARS. Think of in the context of the course book, right? That this researcher has given this acronym, SARS. So let's see. SARS, S for select. What part of the course book do you definitely want to keep? This is very important. Well, students, so this is a very important acronym, SARS, S for select. Now, what does select mean? That what part of the course book do you definitely want to keep, right? Of course, when you see the organization of a book, when you have a look at the book, in fact, when you take a bird eye view of the book, you would select that this part I need to select for this course, right? And then similarly you adapt, right? So what part of the course book do you basically want to keep but need to change in some way to make them more suitable for your students and in tune with your teaching style? You have selected one part. Now that part can be adapted, and once you adapt that, you need to bring some changes in it. You adapt as per your needs. You adapt as per the resources available. You adapt as per the learners. You adapt as per your expertise as well. You adapt as per your teaching styles, right? So this what is important. For example, you are very good at meeting skills, right? You know how to hold meetings. You have experience, in fact, of holding meetings. So there is, a part in a book on business meetings. So you have selected and then you would adapt, right? So therefore your teaching style is important. Once you adapt, in fact, a part of a book, and of course your learners are equally important, your teachers are equally important, so this is very important. And then some parts you reject, or for reject. What part of the course book do you definitely want to leave out? Right? Of course, you select one part of the book, so definitely chances are there that you would reject a part of it. I mean, why you reject? Then you have to see. You may reject because of the time constraint. You may reject because maybe the level of that activity is very high for your learners, or you may reject that you may not be comfortable with that, right? Sometimes it happens that, of course, you have a chunk in the book that you feel that this is, I mean, very difficult for you to incorporate in the class, or maybe you will find it's difficult for your students, considering their understanding level, considering their background knowledge, and considering other factors, right? And then, in fact, this is what SA are, and last S is supplement, right? What else do you need to bring to the course book to fulfill the requirements of the overall syllabus you are working to, and to respond to the needs of your particular students? This is what mean last we call it supplement, that what else do you need to bring to the course book to fulfill these requirements of the overall syllabus you are working on. This is what supplement. I mean, what else you supplement, right? You have selected one thing is, and what else you need. For example, generally people give handouts, right? So they bring handouts from newspapers, they bring handouts from magazines, and those handouts are definitely, I mean, support the part that you have selected, right? For example, when you have a book going to work in English, so then you can bring CVs from Kitty O'Locker's book, you can bring CVs from Munter's book, you can bring CVs from, for example, Harta A. Murphy's book. So why? To supplement that, right? Because the book, of course, going to work in English only mean how to apply for a job is there, and which documents to attach. But when you are teaching language to the students, so you can supplement it with material from different sources. So here, my dear students, of course, it's very important that when you are using course book for language teaching, try to bring supplement material, and for that you have to do research, you have to browse things, you have to download material from different sources, and of course attach those things, and definitely it will help improve your teaching. It will help improve your, of course, the classroom management, interaction, right? So that's why, of course, the teaching is not an easy job. You have to update yourself, right? And nowadays, of course, we are in the age of 3G and 4G, in fact, of computer, telecom technology, cell technology, and of course we are in the IT age, where we have the fastest internet speed. We have what of course advanced laptops, in fact the computer technology is available. So we have to update ourselves in this way. You will select, you would adapt, you would reject, and you would supplement. It's very important, right? The point is that, of course, if you select everything, fine, then it shows that maybe you have not read other things, of course, or it shows that you may not have that critical eye to see that what is right and what is not suitable for the class, and you have to keep in mind your time constraint as well, right? The seeing that in 6-month class, how much, maximum I can do, and how will I do, you can in fact work on that. So this is, my dear students, we call it SARS, is of course, when you use this acronym for using the course book. So the next principle is very important. Prepare the learner. It's very important. Again, if I take you back to the stages of an oral lesson, where we talked about the warm-up stage, right? So the warm-up stage, in fact, prepares the students for which stage? For the presentation stage. If the warm-up stage is very well done, we anticipate that the presentation stage would be equally good, and we expect that, you see, the practice stage would be very well again. And of course we will see that once the warm-up stage would be well done, and then followed by this practice and presentation and the practice, and finally production stage. So here, my dear students, when you have to use the course book for language teaching, please prepare your learners for it, right? And how would you prepare that? First of all, you try to motivate the learner, of course, particularly those learners who in fact resist the use of books in language teaching programs. They take it as a traditional way of language teaching. They would consider it that well they have been doing it, I mean, since their childhood, but they are unable to communicate in that language, right? So yes, in this way maybe there was something wrong with the methodology. And generally, in fact, I mean, other than the language, the courses, when you have English as a subject, so people do it fine to pass their exam. People do it, just it is a requirement. So over there maybe some students don't think that well it is a language and they have to speak this language. And once they reach in their bachelor's or the master's program, they realize this importance of this language, and they start working on it. Exceptions are there. In fact, some schools, particularly nowadays, they in fact focus on the applied linguistics more, and they give chances to their students to speak that language, of course. And yes, I mean, but again, the schools are limited, in fact, and they are expensive, fine. So preparing the learners, well, preparing the learners means two things. First, it means orienting them to the content and purpose of the activity, that is making sure they know what the activity is about and why they are doing it, right? Whatever activity is in fact is there in that book and you are planning to use it, you need to make your students realize it. You need to tell them why this activity is there, what is the utility of this activity, and what significance of this activity. This thing you have to keep in mind. Second, it means making sure they understand the steps for the activity, how to do it. Yes, I mean, again, instructions that the student should know what is the activity, and they should also know that how activity would be done. Simply telling the learners that what, how and why of an activity doesn't prepare them. Preparing the learners means preparing yourself, right? What is the context of the activity? This is important. So preparing the learners, I mean, if you are preparing the learners, means you are prepared, you have prepared yourself, right? If you are not prepared, then of course you may not be able to prepare your learners well. So self-preparation precedes learners' preparation. Prepare yourself, right, before you try to prepare your students. This is important, right? And what does this preparation mean here? That you prepare, you think how this activity, right? And of course, a good teacher, in fact, tries to, I mean, maybe you have a book and you use that book for 2 or 3 semesters, but the good thing is that if in every class you think of a new way to use this activity, and of course you give innovations, and if you think, and definitely you hit upon some ideas, and you can use, and some ideas really work and some ideas don't work. And once you exercise an idea, once you exploit an idea, once you use an idea in the class and you feel it works, right? So, and then you can make a note of it, and of course for the future classes you can use that, and you can refer to other teachers, because that is an idea, in fact, you have worked out, you have thought out, and you see you use it for more than one time, and you saw that results are good. So you can refer, again, it would be your value addition to language teaching, right? So that's why, my dear students, you can in fact incorporate new ideas for language teaching, and whatever the activity is, students should be knowing that what is this activity about and how well it can be done. This was the principle, preparing what? The learners. Now moving on, that monitor and follow up. Yes, my dear students, definitely when you are using the course books in your language teaching process, yes, at times it becomes hard to monitor the class, because you see there are 20 students, there are 25 students, and everybody has a book, in fact. And then now you need to see, you have, of course, I mean, a good teacher is a good manager as well, right? So here, of course, the principles of management may help you, that you have to monitor things, right? Any activity actually has 3 parts: preparation, implementation, and follow-up. So first you prepare for the activity, you prepare the learner, you prepare yourself, in fact, and then you implement that activity, right? And if you execute that activity, and finally you see the follow-up. While the students have, of course, are doing an activity, you have an important role to monitor what and how well they are doing. So classroom management, my dear students, is important. So once activity is being implemented, so you need to monitor. Being teachers, you need to monitor that what is the activity and how it is being executed. The easiest way to monitor is to walk around the classroom. It is very important, right? Once you walk around the classroom, of course, you can see the activities being performed, right, either in a pair work or in a group work. So you can see that, and you can help the learners there and then, right? And we, of course, will call it that management through walk, right? You walk and you management and observe what they are doing and help the learners, in fact. So this is very good, the easiest way, that what you do, you walk around the class, right? You go to each and every group and see what are their problems and try to help them out, right? As you circulate, you can answer questions, keep track of language problems, offer helpful corrections, and make sure they are doing what they are supposed to be doing, right? Again, you have to monitor things, you have to see things, you have to oversee things, right? And you need to understand that what was expected, how it is being done, and all that. Monitoring also helps you to see if the time limit you set for an appropriate and whether it will need to be shortened or what extended. If you feel that an activity is underway and it needs more time, you can work on accordingly. Is that clear? So my dear students, this is again mean a principle, and of course we call it monitor and follow up. So every activity has three parts: preparation, implementation, and what follow up. And you need to walk around the class to see what is going on, how it is being done, what are the problems learners are facing, and try to help them out, right? If there's any conflict among group members, you can also address that. So this is a principle, that is the third one: monitor and follow up. Build a repertoire. I mean, what is it? Build a book, in fact. Build a database, right? Make notes of the observations, make notes of the things that you feel or that you face in the class, right? This repertoire would definitely help you in your future the classes. Once you have a book with you, once you have a repertoire, once you have in fact a diary with you, my dear students, so that would help you, in fact. So I have just told you that, of course, whatever activity you find, you think of and you execute in the class, and you see it works, so my dear students, that activity you can put in your repertoire and see, of course, that try to draft that activity. So this would definitely help you, that what you do, build a repertoire, of course, bring a database, right? Make notes of things, in fact, and draft things. If you can type those things, because this typing can help you, of course, finally compiling a book, and that book can be used for other language teaching. And again, it would be your contribution to the language teaching, because and it happens in every day while teaching, you come across an idea and you skip that, you forget the idea, and if you write that idea down, so you have in fact retained that idea, you have caught that idea. So that's why whenever while teaching an idea strikes to you, write it down, and of course keep on maintaining a repertoire, of course, for language teaching. It is very good activity. Some teachers, in fact, what they do, that they keep on maintaining a diary with them, right? Whenever they find something new, they put them down and they try to of course improve themselves. And again, it's not a bad thing, because of course teachers are human beings, in fact, and once you will be the teachers of the language, being the TEFL instructors, right, being teachers of this language, so keep on try to have a repertoire with you, try to have a copy with you, where you can put down things, where you can write down things, and for the future of others. And again, one thing more, that if you have a repertoire, if somebody asks you, there's no harm in sharing that repertoire. Some people don't share. They say it's my effort and I must be using. So there's no harm in that. If you share, somebody else would be benefited. Ultimately, of course, the teaching process will be improved. So there are some classroom techniques and tasks, right? So these were what we call them, the principles, right? So before that, we talked about background, and then we saw the principles, and now we have what? Classroom techniques and activity task. Now survey or map the territory, in fact, it is very, very important, right? So I told you that, of course, metaphorically the book is a map, right? And you need to do the survey whenever you have you got a book, for example, for language teaching. So survey that book and see again the source, select and adapt, in fact, find, and also supplement. You see, so survey of course means, and keep on surveying as many books as you can, because you can visit different bookshops, and of course particularly go to the language section and see which books are available for language teaching. Have a look on on all those books, and see that of course mean that which book is as per your expectation, or which book may help you to teach your students, and this is again a good thing, right? And of course if you get that book, if you buy that book, that is your investment, in fact, right? Or you can refer to the students, right? They can get that book. So that is what survey or map the territory is important. Group prioritize, again is the point that group prioritizing, in fact, once you have a group, of course, a group of, your chapters can be in different groups, or there are sections, so you set priority, in fact, as far as content is concerned, right? And then of course when you're using the book in a language class, so maybe there are 5 activities and you can prioritize, of course, there are 5 groups and there are 5 activities. Select that give the easy activity can be given to a weak group, and the difficult activity can be given to a good book. So again, the group prioritizing is important, so set priority for that, right? And particularly the group priority, which is important. Personalizing, again, it's very good, classroom technique, that if once we have an activity in the class, yes, put the audience at that place. Ask your students, if you were the boss, you were the interviewee, you were what would you do? So personalized activity, and it is said that once you personalize activity, yes, people enjoy it more and people do it well, right? Because once you personalize yourself, and then of course you think of the ideas and you think accordingly, and of course you see this can be a good activity when you have the course book in language teaching and you personalize. Then format shift, of course, again it's important. You can shift the format. In fact, for example, in the book given list A and list B, match the list A, list B. Of course you can shift the format with the group A and group B. There are students here and there are students B, in fact, in this way, of course. Or instead of matching, shift A and B, you can be with A, in fact. Or a third option can be given, that match the column A and B and write down the sentences which do not match with any of the options. So you can shift the format. Again, here go back to what we talked in the last lecture about test formats, right? But here when you use a course book, you can shift its format. And why do you shift? Maybe you feel that the format which is given, maybe for a different context, for a different situations. You are teaching language in Pakistan, and of course if there are, the debate on wine, so you can change it, in fact, because you know that in our culture it is not there, so you can modify it accordingly. So use props, visuals and realia. Again, it's very important. That visual instructions, elicitation, mistake log, group survey, and activity chart, they're all important activities. You can use that. Use props, in fact, use visuals and realia are very important, right? And every good, nowadays, of course, you will find very good books with very good pictures, and colored pictures are there with very good, the graphs are there, the tables are there, and try to make use of it. Every picture, every visual that is given in the book, see that. And of course UVL instructions, and of course elicitation. Ask student, what do you mean by this, in fact? And student would get different messages. They would be able to, in fact, give you different information. So elicit data from the students. It is again, it's art that how you get information from the students. And then of course a group survey can be done, in fact, right? Or activity chart, right? There are different charts that are available on your books, so you can help the learners, in fact, to have that activity chart well. Or using a course book in the classroom, talk it over, discuss things, in fact, or talk about, right? Talk about that activity or talk it over, in fact, right? These are two, of course, how to use the there are different pictures in the course book. There are different fill in the blanks are there, different paragraphs are there, different charts are there, different tables are there. So talk it over, in fact, right, and then talk about, right. Lots of discussion, right, is there, and once you have a book, I feel that you can discuss for hours. Of course, if you enjoy language, the teaching, there is a lot to be discussed, and you can see things from different angles, right, and that's why talk it over, right, and then whenever there's an activity, talk about that. Involve the students, in fact, they would be anchors, they would be part of that activity, and you can explore it in different ways. So dear students, this is all about this lecture. Today we tried to see that what are the course books, right, and we saw that it is a pre-packaged published material that can be used for language teaching, and we saw what the background to this the course book, and we saw that from the grammar translation method is, of course, in the method we saw that the focus was on reading. In fact, a passage was there, and the students, in fact, would read that, and of course by reading that passage they would come to know about the culture, about the different language items, and different sentences were there. And then we moved on from that grammar translation method to audiolingual method, where we saw that language learning is a habit formation. So where lots of drills are there, and of course, and people learn language through drills. So it was a short background, and then we move on to what are the principles of course using the course books in the class, and we saw that, of course, SARS approach is there, an acronym SARS, that was select the part that you want to use in your of course language teaching, and then adapt it, right, and then of course reject a part of it, and finally of course supplement, right. So select a part of it. It's really useful for your learners, considering your environment, considering your learners, of course their understanding level. You select a part of it, and then of course you adapt it. While adapting, of course, you change it as per the requirements, you change it as per your situations, and then a part can be rejected, right, and finally of course supplement that, right. So supplement with good material. What do we call it? We call it, in fact, a SARS approach. That is really important. So as far as other principles are concerned, you have to monitor and follow. It's important. Have a repertoire, right. Repertoire is what a database, a notebook that you maintain while the teaching. And I told you that, well, in every class you come across an idea, write that idea, find you in fact hit upon an idea, and you can write that idea down, and you can document it, right, so that others would of course use that idea. Then we saw, in fact, different classroom activities for when you are using the book, and we saw many activities. See, you can see that. And then of course we talk about some of the ways in which course books have changed through the years, as well as some of the disadvantages and advantages of using books. We saw some advantages as well and some disadvantages. People say that once you have a book, you are more focused and you cannot communicate language, you cannot learn how to communicate. We talked about the principles for using course books, followed by techniques that show how to put the principles into practice, and how a course book is organized, ways to prepare for, monitor and follow up an activity, ways to adapt and supplement that what is the course book, as well how to build a repertoire of one's own. So these are some things that we talked about in this the lecture. Students, course books, they are important, right? They are effective. It depends on their use, that how you use them well. A good user of a book, in fact, makes it of course an enjoyable activity for the learners, right? Why? Because if you know the roadmap of the book, if you know how the book is organized, right, if you know the setting of the book, you can use it in the best possible way. So with this, it's time to say goodbye. See you in the next class. Till then, it's Allah Hafiz.